Hello, thank you for joining. We're going to get started promptly at 1 o'clock. We're going to get started in just a minute. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to the genealogy workshop featuring Karen Royal. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature. We will answer your questions at the end of the webinar. Now, Kathy Hambrick, the founder of the River Road African American Museum, will say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathy Hambrick, and I am the founder of the River Road African American Museum that is located in Donaldsonville, Louisiana. I am also the curator and project director for a special project that is funded by the Social Science Research Council of America. And the funding is to curate an exhibit about the GU 272 of Ascension Parish. The exhibit will be presented both virtually, online, and on-site at the Episcopal Church of Ascension on Nickel Street in Donaldsonville. You will learn more about the history of that church and its relationship to the GU 272 in Karen Royal's presentation. The exhibit will open on the weekend of Juneteenth on the date of Saturday, June 18th, this year, 2022. All of you who are enrolled in this first workshop will receive an invitation to the grand opening of the exhibit. The River Road African American Museum is also planning a series of workshops that will coincide with this GU 272 project for Ascension Parish and the neighboring parishes. So follow us on social media and you will see the calendar for those series of workshops to come. Now for the introduction of our historian. Karen Royal is one of the country's leading genealogists and authorities on the GU 272. She has been interviewed by local, national, and international media. She was one of the founders and is a founding member of the GU 272 Descendant Association. She hosts a weekly Zoom with the descendants of the Jesuit enslavement and is currently the co-host of Nurturing Our Roots. Karen, you can take it from here and tell us some more about this magnificent history that is just groundbreaking research for all of us who are interested in African American genealogy.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you to the museum for inviting me to be a part of this project. Welcome everyone for this presentation about the GU 272 and Jesuit enslavement. I've just placed some links into the chat that will be helpful beyond this presentation. I'll place them in the chat again at the end of my presentation for those who join after we get started. And so I'm going to go on and start to share my screen. Long before the 1838 sale that so many of you may have heard about, the Jesuits in Maryland were involved in slaveholding. The 1838 sale was needed to finance their operations, and not just Georgetown University, but Loyola of Baltimore as well was financed by the sale of those 272 people we now know are actually more than 314. That sale financed Jesuit operations in Maryland and throughout the province as they moved westward to spread Catholicism. The Jesuits currently have about 27 colleges and universities throughout the country. So I know a lot of people think of only Georgetown when they think about this 1838 sale, but I just want to make sure that people understand that it was more than Georgetown that benefited from that sale. During the time of Jesuit slaveholding, in the mid 1800s, they took some of the enslaved people from some of their farms or missions or plantations in Maryland and moved westward into Missouri, right around the Florissant area of Missouri. And they then established St. Louis College. But the Jesuits also enslaved people in Louisiana, Illinois, Kentucky, and Alabama. In Maryland, in 1765, they had missions, as they called them, in St. Inigo's Manor, which is down in St. Mary's County, Maryland, where they enslaved 20 people at that time. Newtown, where they enslaved 29. St. Thomas Manor in Charles County, Maryland, they enslaved 38 people. White Marsh, which is where Prince George's County is now, 65 people. St. Joseph Manor and St. Marie Manor, we don't hear much about, but they had a small number of people there as well. And then Bohemia Manor, they enslaved 26 people. So if in 1838, they sold 300 plus people, you can tell those numbers grew exponentially. Father Thomas Mlady and Father William Mcsherry were the architects of the sale in 1838. Most of us became aware of that sale in 1838 when in 2016, the New York Times did an article about the sale because students were protesting on Georgetown's campus actually in 2015. And they had taken over the president's office. There were two buildings on campus named for, one named for Mlady and one named for Mcsherry. And students wanted those names off of that building when they learned that Mlady and Mcsherry were the architects of selling human beings. So in 1838, they sold what they thought were 272 people. They sold over 300 people to Dr. Jesse Beatty and Henry Johnson, who was the former governor of Louisiana. He also was a US representative at the time of the sale and US senator after the sale. And he also was the owner of the Episcopal Church in Ascension Parish. He donated the land for that church in 1851. And ironically, 1851 was around the time he had divested himself of owning Chatham Plantation and the people he enslaved. There were several transactions that happened. In June, that was when the articles of agreement were drawn up for that sale. Mlady executed it, and Mcsherry was the attorney. Henry Johnson has a bill of sale for 56 of those more than 300 people, and another one for 84. He did not receive most of those 84. His 56 people arrived on the Catherine Jackson, which was the second ship to arrive from the port of Alexandria. He later ended up having to mortgage the people that he purchased in 1839. In 1844, he then sells half of them to his brother-in-law, Philip Barton Key. And also in 1844, he also renegotiates the terms of the payments because he was having financial difficulty. And then in June of 1845, he sells the half to Philip Barton Key in 1845. Oh, I'm sorry, Philip Barton Key sells his half to John R. Thompson. And then in December of 1851, Henry Johnson sells his remaining half to John R. Thompson. So then John R. Thompson becomes the full owner of Chatham Plantation and all of the people enslaved there. There's also an undated purchase where Henry Johnson purchased another 11 people from Thomas Mlady. The people who were purchased, the GU 272 as they have become known, came from St. Inigo's Manor, Newtown Manor, St. Thomas Manor, and White Marsh. And this is an actual photograph of the list of people who were sold, divided up by manner. And they also included little numbers on this document that told us which ship they were placed on, ship number 1, 2, or 3. This is a photograph of the actual Catherine Jackson, and they were shipped to Ascension Parish, the ones that Henry Johnson purchased. Jesse Beatty's allotment of enslaved people went to Iberville Parish and Terrebonne Parish. Chatham Plantation is located along the Mississippi River, right at the Iberville and Ascension Parish line. And you can see that indicated by the arrow. The question we get most is people want to know if they are a descendant. And what I often tell them is, first thing you have to do is get your family history, especially talking to many of your older family members. And if possible, record those conversations. They will be very helpful and valuable into the future. Once you get your oral family history from your family members, and talk to several family members, not just one, create a well-researched tree with sources. And when I talk about sources, that means birth, death, and marriage records for everyone that you put in your tree. Begin with yourself and work backwards until your parents and grandparents on both sides, and so on and so on as you move back. Once you've gotten those birth, death, and marriage records, begin to locate your family members on the census records. Oftentimes, when looking at the census, you will see that there are more people that are part of your family. Sometimes you see cousins or grandparents that take you to the next generation, or great-great-grandparents and so on those census records. So that's when you begin to discover relatives that your living family members may not have told you about. But it is very important not to add people to your tree on speculation alone, unless you mark it as such. And as you are building your family tree, I find it very helpful to build it on Ancestry.com, because they will give you some hints, but be careful with the hints. Some of the hints are to incorrect information, so you should always verify that information before assuming that it is correct. Once you've gotten a good family tree built, including all of the siblings of your ancestors, your direct line ancestors, or your pedigree tree. Now you want to make sure you have all of their siblings, including the people they married. All of this information is going to be very helpful in trying to determine if you are a part of the GU 272, if you are a descendant, or if you're just simply related to them. Once you've built that tree, review our surname list. And the surname list is one of the links in the chat that I gave you a few minutes ago. Also, the Georgetown Memory Project has several DNA test kits. And you want to look at those DNA test kits, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on with the presentation. You want to look at the shared matches you have with those DNA test kits, and pay particular attention to certain surname clusters based on the surname list that I've already given you. If you find that you are matching one of those DNA test kits from the Georgetown Memory Project, these are some things that's going to be helpful to you as you further try to figure out if you are indeed a descendant of the GU 272 or a Jesuit enslavement. And let me go on and make the distinction right now. I use those terms GU 272 and Jesuit enslavement interchangeably, but to be clear, the GU 272 are those who were a part of the Articles of Agreement for the original sale in 1838. Those are the people who were shipped to Louisiana pursuant to that sale. Jesuit enslavement are all of the people who were enslaved by the Jesuits anywhere. We mostly talk about the United States, but the Jesuits enslaved people outside of the United States as well. And what we have found, and after 6 years, we have found that there are genetic connections with those who were a part of the 1838 sale and people in the other states where the Jesuits enslaved people. So that is a clear indication that they split up our family members. Even though as a part of the sale, they were not supposed to split up families, but I think they decided it was okay to split up the adult family members. So they may have kept me and sold me to Louisiana, but they may have sold my sister to Missouri, well, took my sister with them to Missouri. So it's good to learn about Jesuit history. We have been doing that on our calls that we do every Thursday night, where we have descendants and people who think they may be descendants join us on Thursday nights on a Zoom call. And it really is like a study session. We look at Jesuit history. We look at our DNA connections and family tree connections as we try to locate more descendants of Jesuit enslavement and more descendants of the GU 272. Next is the family history connections in locations known to have a Jesuit slavery. That is going to be very important. Learn about that history as well. As I said before, review that surname list. And just because you see a name on the surname list, it among your DNA matches doesn't automatically make you a descendant. Further research is necessary. There will be some surname specific DNA connections that you will find as you're doing your research. Pay particular attention to those in Ascension, Iberville, and Terrebonne parishes in Louisiana, as well as the other locations. When you find that you match a Georgetown Memory Project sample kit, review all of the lines on that family tree for that Georgetown Memory Project sample kit. And we're going to go through a few of those as we continue on with the presentation, where you will be able to see the line that is specifically related to Jesuit enslavement versus the other lines in a person's family tree. Review the history and migration patterns of Jesuit enslavement. Look for locations and surnames in common. For example, if you know that you are a Butler descendant and you match a certain Georgetown Memory Project DNA kit that has Butlers. Your Butlers, you know they come out of Virginia, but the Georgetown Memory Project tree shows that those Butlers are coming out of Maryland. That may not be the same Butlers, but then again, you may find that it is once you've done further analysis of the DNA. Look at your shared matches. Sometimes you'll see those shared matches comes up in clusters, and almost everybody in that cluster has some kind of connection to that specific surname. There's a website called GEDmatch where we use that website to compare the segment level data on each chromosome to see if the connection we have found is indeed a connection to the person who is a direct descendant of Jesuit enslavement. It is very important not to make assumptions. You want to verify everything that you do with your tree and as you try to sort out this history. And don't get caught up with spellings. Spelling variations occur. One of the surnames in our history is Hill. Sometimes on census record, you see it with written as Hills with an S. So don't be worried about the spelling. That is something that happens. So now what we're gonna do is look real close at 4 different DNA kits that I manage. One, the one indicated by the red number 1, that's for my maternal aunt. And she matches one of the Georgetown Memory Project kits. That is the kit AH. And we're going to talk a little bit more about AH. Just because she matches AH does not mean that she is a descendant. It's always important to do further research. And I have not yet been able to connect her to a particular a person in AH's tree. So I have not found that common ancestor for that particular DNA match. Then number 2. Number 2 matches HA, MB, PM, and MW. Those are all people who took the DNA test for the Georgetown Memory Project. This is my maternal cousin. And through reviewing his shared matches, I can see that he has links to Maryland, and I believe those links are on his mother's side. I'm related to him on his father's side. So just because my cousin has these matches, that looks like he is probably a Queen descendant. Queen is one of the surnames, or a Brown descendant. His mother was a Brown. But in addition to these Georgetown Memory Project DNA kits, he's matching many, 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 many other known descendants of Jesuit enslavement who have roots in Maryland. So I know that as I continue to do my research for this particular cousin, I will probably find a common ancestor that he has all the way to Maryland. But I haven't found that yet. And again, I believe that this is on his mother's side. I will do the work to prove that. And if it's on his mother's side, then that does not automatically make me a descendant. It makes him a descendant on his mother's side. I am related to him on his father's side. Now let's come over to number 3, which is another maternal cousin. Number 3 is a known GU272 descendant. She has done her research. She has tracked back to a Butler ancestor who was a part of the sale. She also happens to be my husband's cousin because my husband is a direct descendant. I am related to her on her mother's side. She is a descendant on her father's side. It does not make me a descendant because she is my cousin. And then number 4 is my husband. He matches 13 of the GU272 kits. He had 9 ancestors, direct line ancestors, who were a part of that 1838 sale. He is a Butler, a Hawkins, Mahoney, Blacklock, Winderry. I think that's all that comes to mind. And he is a descendant. And he also matches dozens more descendants. If someone is matching him on his Hawkins line, they're not going to just match him or just match the kits indicated here. HA in particular is a Hawkins Butler descendant. They're not just going to match him and that person. They are going to have dozens and dozens of DNA matches. And so we get this all the time. Someone will have a DNA connection to one kit. And I often see on social media, they have claimed that they are GU272 descendants. Unless you have done the work to sort that out, it doesn't automatically make you a descendant. So as you can see from these 4 examples, number 1, they're matching one kit. They likely match someone on a different line other than their GU272 line. Number 2, my cousin is matching several kits. And I can already see from the clusters and shared matches that it is either on the Brown or Queen line or both, because the Browns and the Queens in Maryland are related. Number 3, my other cousin is matching 7 kits. She had already, through her research, determine that she was a descendant. She didn't even need the DNA because she did the research. She had the people in her tree who are listed on in the sales document and on the manifest. So she knew she was a descendant even without the DNA connections. And you don't have to have the DNA connections to figure it out. You can figure it out directly from your tree research if you are tracking back to Maryland or these Louisiana locations where the descendants are, or if your tree is also bringing you to those other locations where the Jesuits enslaved people. And we have been in touch with some descendants in those other locations because they found us through the DNA connections. And then number 4, that's my husband, who has 9 direct ancestors. He matches 13 of these Georgetown Memory Project test kits and dozens of others. So it's good to keep in mind that you have to do the work to figure this out, and matching one kit is not enough. I've highlighted the surnames that are particular to Ascension Parish, and I know that it is impossible for you to take all of this in. That's why I've given you a link. And when I'm finished speaking, I will post the link again for these surnames. Now, the other thing I did was I went through the information at the American Ancestors website. The American Ancestors GU272 website lists a lot of information about the families involved with the GU272. That is a project from the Georgetown Memory Project. And these are the families, and it's a lot. It's I think I counted about 120 surnames that married into the GU272. I put an asterisk by those that are also GU272 surnames because it was not immediately clear that let's say the Kelly line, for example. We know the Kelly family is a family in Ascension Parish. They were also a family that was a part of the sale. It's not immediately clear that that particular Kelly that married into a GU272 family is the same. So I put an asterisk there. Same thing for Lee and Hall. All of those are surnames within the sale. But all the rest, now imagine, this is 120 different families in Ascension Parish that married into the Henry Johnson purchased 140 people. That would make many families in Ascension a part of the GU272. And so I hope that the information I'm sharing will help people who don't already know their connection, will help them figure out if they too are a part of this amazing history. Now, some of the families in the Georgetown Memory Project DNA study are depicted here. The kit with the initials AJ and SW, those are descendants of Arnold Jones and Anna Mahoney. On the American Ancestors website, where they have links to the different family groups, there's a PDF document that you can download, and those documents are numbered by family group. AJ and SW connect to family groups 30 and 39. Next, there's Peter Adams and Peter Adams and Nellie Hawkins, as well as William Ware and Henrietta Adams. Henrietta Adams is the daughter of Nellie Hawkins and Peter Adams. Now, this Hawkins family is the same Hawkins family that my husband is related to. My husband's family comes from Iberville Parish, Louisiana. Henrietta Adams was enslaved by Henry Johnson in Ascension Parish. Henry Johnson purchased Peter Adams and Nellie Hawkins, but later they ended up in Iberville. But William Ware and Henrietta, who were young at the time of the sale, they got married and they had many children. So the DNA kit AH is connected to this couple, William Ware and Henrietta Adams, and their family group numbers are 1, 17, and 43. When you look at those documents, 1, 17, and 43, you will be able to see the specific people who married into the descendants of Peter Adams, Nellie Hawkins, and William Ware and Henrietta Adams. There's a lot. Much of Ascension is related to this one couple. There's some amazing history associated with this one couple, Henrietta Adams and William Ware, and it's really exciting to research that particular family, and I actually know several of the family members. Next, the kit BJ, they are a descendant of Joseph Greenleaf and Esther, who were on that a part of the sale. And they are from the family groups 23, 27, 30, and 33. That's that family group is the Butler, Campbell, Green, Greenleaf, Jones, and Mahoney family. That's another very, very large family. And then we have Elizabeth, and in the document she's listed as just Elizabeth, and her children have surnames of Hill and Plowden. Kits JH and JW from the family group 24. That's another family that had many descendants in Ascension Parish. And now we have Kit CB, and we have Hillary, that's the descendants of Hillary Ford and Henny Butler. Henny Butler is one of the daughters of Nace and Bibby Butler, who were actually purchased by Jesse Beatty and ended up on the plantation in Iberville Parish. So that's another one of the families where you can see the cross connection. So you will, if you are a descendant of Hillary Ford and Henny Butler, you will have DNA connections in Iberville Parish as well as in Terrebonne Parish. Because Henny Butler's mother was a Mahoney, and the Mahoney family in particular was split up to all 3 parishes here in Louisiana, as well as when several of them remained in Maryland. Louisa Mahoney, Louisa Mahoney, who is the aunt of Henny Butler, remained at the St. Inigo's plantation. Her brothers remained as well, but then they were sold away from St. Inigo's plantation. And we have made DNA connections with some of the family members of those Mahoney relatives who remained in Maryland. And so this family is a perfect example of how the destructive nature of slavery and how it splits families up. Some remained in Maryland, and when they got to Louisiana, 3 siblings, Robert Mahoney, Anna Mahoney, and Bibiana Mahoney, were placed in 3 different parishes here in Louisiana. So all of those children that they had never got to know their cousins because they were split up, but they have now been, many of the descendants have been reunited in present day time because of the research and the DNA. And these are family groups 27, 30, and 44 from the American Ancestors GU272 website. And then lastly, there's the Adeline Campbell family. Adeline, the descendant who took the test is SL, and that they are represented in the family groups 15 and 33. SL is Campbell, Green, Greenleaf, Harris, Ware, and West surnames. So I definitely encourage you to download all of those family group sheets from the American Ancestors website. It is those sheets where you will find more detailed information so that when you make your family tree and you, let's say that you are a Julian descendant. I know that the Julians are a big part of Ascension Parish. I know several Julians, but it's only going to be certain Julians that's going to be a part of this this history. It's going to be the Julian descendants of the Julian who married into the GU272 family. Okay, just a closer look at the kit AH. Ironically, many of the people in Maryland find themselves DNA connected to this one kit. Many people who only match one kit, they match AH, and I'm always intrigued by this family. So those surnames are those people represented around the red boxes. They would not be GU272 descendants. Only the descendants of those people in the green boxes, tracking all the way back to Nellie, to Peter Adams and Nellie Hawkins, and actually all the way back to Isaac Hawkins. Isaac Hawkins is the ancestor whose name appears on one of the buildings at Georgetown. And so if you're connecting to the DNA kit AH, pay particular attention if you are able to figure out your connection, if it's coming from the Cain or Sheffin line, you may not necessarily be a descendant unless you descend specifically from from Clara Sheffin's daughter, Jessie Lee. Then that is the pathway that makes you a descendant. And I know it could be very confusing, but that's why you got to start first with a well-researched tree. Then review all of the information, especially that information from the American Ancestors website, where you can see the particular families that married into the GU272. So Clara Sheffin married Bolden Ware, and that is the beginning of the lineage for their descendants as to be a part of the GU272. Sometimes you do your research, and let's say you find that you're related to descendant AH on her Coleman line. Well, that's in the red box. So no, that doesn't automatically make you a descendant. Remember, you have to connect to the lines that are a part of the GU272. That's why that surname list is so important. And this is a link to some of the resources that I use on a regular basis to do the work. And I will post these when I'm finished with my presentation. As we begin the Q&A session, I will post these links again for people who have joined us since the presentation started. The Georgetown Slavery Archives is a great place to find a lot of the original historical documents. I print them out because I like to handle paper. Slavery History, Memory, and Reconciliation Project at Jesuits.org. That project has the information about some of the other locations where the Jesuits enslaved people. You've heard me speak often about the American Ancestors GU272 website. You will also find interviews with descendants there, as well as those family group sheets that are critical to helping you figure out if you are a descendant of the GU272. Ancestry.com. You can use any company to test your DNA, but I encourage you to use Ancestry.com because then you'll see if you connect to those test kits, as well as dozens of other descendants whose names you see on that surname list. You could also find the historical documents, census records, and other records that help you make those connections so that your tree could be well sourced. FamilySearch.org is another place where you can find documents if you don't want to pay to be a member of Ancestry. Many of the same documents you can find on FamilySearch.org. And then there's GEDmatch. GEDmatch is a website where you can upload your DNA from Ancestry to GEDmatch. Then you will connect with other people who use some of the other companies as well as Ancestry to test their DNA. At that website, you are able to look at the DNA and compare your DNA chromosome by chromosome. And I know that could get very technical, And again, you're welcome to join us on our Thursday Zoom calls where we can help walk you through that process. And don't forget, you have to get off of the computer also. Get into the courthouses, libraries, and archives. I didn't put on there, but cemeteries is another great source of information as you are trying to research your family history. You'll find some documents in these places and books that are helpful to you in doing your research. We're going to go into the question and answer period, but I also want to invite you to follow us on social media at Jesuit Enslaved on Twitter and Instagram. And we have a Facebook public page, as well as a private group for people who are descendants of Jesuit enslavement. You can send us a message if you would like to join us on our Thursday night Zoom calls to help you figure out if you are a descendant. And I want to thank you all for your attention. And if you have questions, you can use the question and answer, the Q&A section to do your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
We do have a few questions that have popped up in the Q&A. The first one is that it seems common for Georgetown slave descendants to be relatives. Do you and your husband share any of the same relatives?
My husband is ironically a DNA cousin to my paternal aunt. We also share many of our Maryland relatives. That was really a shocker to me, but I know from my research that my dad's family tracks back to Maryland. And the European members of his family in particular, I was able to document to the Prince George's County area in Maryland. And sadly, some of them were the slaveholders, and some of those slaveholders gave, sold, traded, or however, interacted with the Jesuits. So I'm not surprised to see that connection.
Excellent. The next question is, what's been the most exciting or interesting confirmed DNA family discovery for you or in this project up to this point?
I don't know if I could pick out any one particular discovery, because I would say seeing links to people that we have not been able to track down as a part of this history. One of those examples is the Mahoney family. My husband's a direct descendant of Harry and Anna Mahoney, who remained in Maryland. And we know we see the connections, and we have met our cousins here in Louisiana, but we are seeing links to some of the Mahoneys who may have gotten their freedom from the Jesuits long before the sale. And so we continue to do that work to try to track that down. But I think that's the most exciting. I always have energy to continue that research.
Excellent. The next question is, how do we connect our ancestry DNA to GU272? My ancestor is Mariah Hill from Maryland.
Well, you got to do the research. Does Mariah, are you finding the DNA connections to Louisiana? Because the Hill family had many, many, many descendants who were here, living descendants here in Louisiana. And they were several children, Hill children, that was a part of the sale. Finding out if your DNA connects to them is, are you seeing those matches? Are you seeing clusters when you do shared matches? That will give you an indication if you're connecting to them.
And I know you already covered this in the presentation, but would you restate how and where you can get a DNA test?
The Ancestry.com website, and actually Ancestry often puts their tests on sale. I usually buy a few of them whenever they're on sale. Because Ancestry has the largest database, that would be a good one to try, because we know that the Georgetown Memory Project has those test kits for people they have already researched and they know that they are descendants. And I know that there are dozens more descendants who have taken DNA tests on Ancestry.
Excellent. The next one is a compliment. Thank you so much for this amazing presentation and for all the wonderful information. It seems a bit overwhelming. Is there a document that will guide someone through the process, beginning on with how to develop a well-researched family tree?
I don't think there's any one document. This is a process. You know, I liken it to making gumbo. People always ask me for a recipe for gumbo. And I said, for us, it's a process. I can show you how to make gumbo. And so, you know, you begin with a well-researched tree. It's helpful to do DNA. It's a tool, but it is overwhelming. But I think if you begin at the beginning, that makes it a little less overwhelming. And there are resources online. I placed a link to some of those resources that I spoke about. I just placed that link in the chat box again, so please download the chat so you would have that link. And definitely reach out to us on social media at Descendants of Jesuit Enslavement.
Excellent. Kathy, you want to chime in here too? You're on mute, Kathy.
Yes, I wanted to say to the person who answered that question and anybody else, yes, this is a daunting task. I mean, people invest 20 years in just trying to find a few descendants. And of course, those of us who are trying to find our descendants back to Africa, I mean, it could be 15, 20 years, but thanks to the technology, we can do this work, but you have to start to do the work. The River Road African American Museum is through our series of genealogy workshops. We kind of started with the most complex with Karen right now. She's an expert, complex information technology. We will be doing beginners workshops with other genealogists to tell you where to start, how to start. Do you use family search? What's the difference between 23andMe? Should I do DNA? What are the ethical implications with doing DNA in regards to African Americans? And we will also be doing a children's workshop on genealogy. So you want to stay connected with the River Road African American Museum because we will have workshops for beginners.
Thank you, Kathy. The next question is for Karen. Did you find the surnames that went to Terrebonne Parish like you did with the Ascension Parish?
I have not pulled them out of the document yet, but when I was working on this presentation, I was getting so excited, and I definitely want to do that because I find it helpful. Actually, I have my surname list sitting right in front of me on my desk, and I actually have family in Terrebonne Parish, and I want to know how all of that works myself. So probably after this project is over, I'll probably go through and pull out those surnames, but I have not done that yet.
Okay, next question. Is there an extra benefit for a paid service versus using a free one?
I find there to be a benefit because it just makes getting the documents a lot easier and attaching them to my tree a lot easier. In terms of the DNA, you're able to see more information from your DNA matches when you have the paid service. You don't have to have a paid service to use DNA or to build your tree. But when you start to get deep into the research, you're going to find it to be more convenient.
Excellent. And Kathy, you wanted to chime in about the parishes?
Yes, I want to say that you remember Karen said at the beginning that Beatty, the other purchaser with Henry Johnson, owned plantations in Ascension Parish. So all the way down Bayou Lafourche, all of those communities, Platenville, Clarksville, Belrose, all the way down to Thibodeau and Terrebonne Parish. We're going to, in our series, we will eventually look more closely at Assumption all the way to Terrebonne. So, and we won't forget about your cousins up there in Iberville also. So, but Ascension had one of the largest numbers. The exhibit is going to be phenomenal. We're actually exhibiting in this church that was owned by Henry Johnson. We're dedicating this Episcopal church to the enslaved people and their descendants. So there's going to be more to come in the years to come.
Excellent. The next question comes from Rhonda Clofer. My maiden name is Irvin. I saw Irwin in the surname list. I guess, could it be the same? Might be the question.
Well, it is possible if your family comes from Ascension Parish. There was an Irwin family member who married into the GU 272. And as I said in my presentation, sometimes spelling is a little off. I mean, I have seen, I'm a Richard or Richard descendant. I've seen one of my cousins say Richards with an S on an N. But in New Orleans, we are Richard, but my cousins in Baton Rouge say Richard. So sometimes spelling is fluid, but if you do your research and you connect to that Irwin family in Ascension, it could be the same.
Okay, Kathy, you wanted to mention something?
Yes, in that list of names to all of my classmates and church mates in Ascension Parish, I wanted to point out, just in looking through Karen's presentation, to my friends, former high school classmates and church members, Thompson family. The Thompson family is a big family in Geismar all the way down to Convent. You want to particularly pay attention. Betty Queen, the Queen family, the Hill family, Butlers, Hawkins. Of course, we said Irwin and Irvins. Hall, there's a big Hall group of family members out there in Gonzales as well as Donaldsonville. So look at both sides of the river, dig, both sides of the river. You may now live in Prairieville. Your grandfather or great-great-grandmother and great-great-grandfather may have always lived in Dutchtown. But remember, some of those people married people on the other side of the river in the Donaldsonville, West Bank area. So if you see your last name, we're inviting you to get busy, and we're hoping we can start a River Road African American Genealogy Society, so you guys can learn from each other and we can teach children to do this research also.
Great. There was another question about the recording. Yes, this program was recorded, and we will send it to you as soon as it's available to us. The next question, my family is from Holmes County, Mississippi. I need help in getting started to reach on the Cooper and Dickens family. And they sent their email address. This is a Betty Roberson. Kathy?
Well, we want you to direct your questions. Karen gave her social media information. I think we'll show that slide at the end. So you want to send your questions that can't be answered here right now today to her. And then if there's any questions specifically about how the museum might be able to help you, she will direct those questions to us.
Okay, there seems to be different kinds of DNA tests costing different amounts. Is there a specific one you'd recommend? You already answered that one.
Yes, I recommend Ancestry.com. That one, sometimes you can get it as cheap as $59. I think the regular price is $99. And while I'm speaking, I just want to also add, as Kathy was sharing those surnames, I identify at least 3 different Jones families. Definitely 2 were a part of the sale, The other may have just been a Jones family in Ascension, but the Jones family is huge, 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 huge in Ascension.
And the Henry family also, the Henry
Yes.
family in Donaldsonville also, yes.
And how do we research via cemeteries, especially if the cemeteries are not kept up anymore, no tombstones, or they are too damaged to read? Or how do you find where descendants are buried?
Well, that's a lot of work. Actually, Kathy and I are planning to go walking through some cemeteries soon. And so you got to definitely go and visit the cemeteries, check with the churches that are associated with the cemeteries. They may have a list. If it's a Catholic cemetery, check with the diocese of that area. Same thing with the Episcopal Church. Then there's Find a Grave online. Find a Grave, there are people who have gone through and documented many of the graves for the cemeteries. But I find one of the best ways is to just get out there and go looking, wear the right kind of shoes. In fact, put your boots on when you go out there, because you never know what you might encounter.
I would encourage you not to go in the summertime, lots of snakes and spiders. I want to say at the Ascension Parish Library, there are a couple of registries, and I know many of the libraries have cemetery records that have been turned over to them by genealogy societies. So don't forget your parish, your local libraries. Of course, the Catholic Church keeps excellent records on their cemeteries. And I want to tell you, and I'm specifically talking to the African American community, we must do better in our Protestant churches of keeping these cemetery records. When your grandmother passed away and she was the secretary of the church and she kept all of those records, then now here we are, grandchildren, grown grandchildren of those men and women who kept those records, and we don't do anything to volunteer to put those records into a database. So our records are only as good as we are in helping to maintain them and helping to share them. Don't forget about obituaries. You can find obituaries online, vital records. Go back to the funeral home and ask if they have obituaries. I don't know what's going to happen during this COVID season in regards to family reunions, because you all know, where is it that we learn about our genealogy? Usually from that one person in the family who has taken all of their time to put together your program book and your genealogy and your family tree. Please reach out and help those family members who have this information. Work together, form teams. We're at home now and we can do this research online and share. And I'm hoping for the day when we'll all be able to get back together for the big family reunions and, just continue to chime in, work, stay in contact with Karen and stay on board to find out when our next workshops will be.
Can I just add
Go ahead,
one
sure.
thing about the what Kathy was just saying about those obituaries? There's somebody in your family who collects church obituary programs. I promise you, there's somebody in your family that has the funeral programs, even wedding programs. Find out who that is and make sure that you can get a copy of them. I know I have a folder with a bunch of them. My cousin Antoinette Harrell, who's a genealogist, has gotten a bunch of them from the Richardson Funeral Home and Tangible Hope Parish, and she has had them, has donated them to the library in Baton Rouge, as well as some to Southeastern University, and now they're being digitized. If we can get more African American funeral programs digitized and uploaded into archives, that will help so many people as they try to do their research. And you can help with that by finding who in your family has them, and you could also become a collector too.
Yeah, that's very true. I know I often go to family members and get obituaries, scan them into my phone and upload them to Ancestry. So that's very good, very important. Next question, dear Ms. Royal, when you go through the surnames in Terrebonne Parish, please email me, okay? I'll send this one to you.
Thank you.
Ancestry.com offers an option to hire genealogists. Can this be helpful if you can afford it?
Absolutely, if you could afford it. I wish I could afford it.
And then another one, how do you find paid assistants? Do you have any referrals?
Can you repeat that?
How do you find paid assistants? Do you have any referrals?
Well, if you email me, I can give you some referrals. You just mentioned the Ancestry.com assistants, paid assistants, but there are many genealogists with different specialties. And so it depends on what it is you're looking for. But if you contact me on social media or email me, and I'll put the email address up at the end, and I can find out more specifically what you're looking for.
Yes, Karen and I will work to put together maybe a directory of those genealogists who do this as a profession, because there are a number of them across the country, African American genealogists, and also in Louisiana, who for a fee can assist you. So we'll work on putting together a little directory, and we'll post that on the website of the African American Museum, and then Karen can also post it on her social media.
Okay, great. Jed Match, are the kits identified as GU272 descendants? Is there a list of kit numbers that I can compare my DNA test to?
They are not identified as GU272. This is what, if you contact me on social media, I can give you some of the kits. We talk about this extensively on my Thursday night Zoom calls, and we share kit numbers as new people come into the fold. But there is not one singular database of GU272 kit numbers. That's a good project for somebody.
Well, looks like there's a lot of grant writing out there for us left to do, because I mean, you know, if we can find the right grant or get another grant from the Social Science Research Council, we may be able to put together our own team of genealogists and, you know, do better work locally here on the River Road. So we'll keep our eyes open. I want to thank Karen Royal. Karen, boy, we have a little bit more work to do for the exhibit. I want to thank our board member, Regina Bajeron, for helping to facilitate this workshop. And most of all, we want to thank you, the members of the public who are our stakeholders. And we only do this work to help educate you. This work that we do at the museum and the work that Karen does is to help our community, to help African Americans be more self-sufficient and finding out who we are and who our people were. Remember to follow us both on social media. Thank you for joining, and direct your questions to those social media links. We look forward to seeing you in April. The next workshop will be on April 2nd, and I can tell you, Karen has some exciting information that ties Ascension Parish, descendants of the GU272, to Grambling State University and Southern University. Have a nice day.
Goodbye, everyone.